Good afternoon on what is a bright, clear, breezy but mild day. It is Sunday the 27th of February. I am back in the week with a couple of parcels, one of which I've already opened but need to dig into further. Of course, I am accompanied by a nice cup of tea. And let's see what's here. Now, I have already pulled out this, which is the One Ring Lawmaster Screen and Rivendell Compendium. Looking forward to looking to reviewing that. Looks interesting supplement. And there is also in here a One Ring starter set. Now I've already opened one of these, so I've got two. But what I also have to do, so just shut this down, is the One Ring. This is the standard edition. Role-playing in the world of the Lord of the Rings, based on the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. So, we've got a nice cover. This is published by Free League Publishing. It's the second edition. From what I gather, basically, it's a streamlined version of the first edition rules published by Cubicle 7. We've got on the cover, it's a nice image of the Fellowship under threat. Not quite sure what the specific threat is, but in the background we do have the Dark Lord Sauron himself, and of course the One Ring, as a motif on the back. Wall of text, but it says, and I'm going to take another cup of tea before I make a run at this, because let's be honest, I didn't expect to be reading this out, but here we go. 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. And there we go, doing my best, Michael Horton, for long-time fans of Lord of the Rings there. Enter the world of Middle-earth with the One Ring, the official tabletop role-playing game based on the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. Designed specifically to evoke the atmosphere of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, the game contains rules for creating heroes and sending them off on adventures in a land threatened by the growing shadow. This beautifully illustrated, full-colour hardback manual presents Middle-earth as it was 20 years after Bilbo Baggin's remarkable disappearance and unexpected return. The great events narrated in The Lord of the Rings are still 50 years away, leaving plenty of room to narrate stories worthy of an epic. Now in its second edition, the One Ring comes with an updated and revised rules, a new visual style, and a focus on the land of Eredor, the lone lands west of the Misty Mountains. Among its key features are rules for travelling across the land, journey, facing frightening foes, combat, and meeting the personalities of Middle-earth Council. Through thorough advice for the Lawmaster on how to bring Middle-earth to life, including rules for magical treasure, the Shadow, and the Eye of Mordor. In-depth information on 6 patrons, individuals sponsoring the adventures of the player heroes, including Bilbo Baggins and Gandalf the Grey. A bestiary containing a spread of adversaries from lowly orc soldiers and highway robbers to monstrous cave trolls and barrow wights. Rules to create your very own nameless things and noble beings from the dark corners of the world. A complete landmark adventure, The Star of the Mist, with extra support for new Lawmasters in the form of tutorial advice throughout. So lots of things to go through there. The rules for travelling and fighting and meeting the personalities showcase sort of like the 3 aspects of playing in Middle-earth. Of course, which is the one is the journey, when you go on basically the trips of the Fellowship, and also the one done by Bilbo, basically done during the summer months, and taking months at a time because it's all walking, although there may be some riding, and then combat is when you face your foes, and then council is dealing with the people, the folk of Middle Earth. And these are all use sort of different rule sets within the game. To use the same core mechanics, but to different effects. Okay, and they're all important. Journey in particular is one of the big features of the game. Most people are sort of going, okay, we've got to. If you're thinking in your average role-playing game, all right, I'm going to walk from Hobbiton to the Last Lonely House to the House of Orond. Yes, you walk there, make a couple of rolls for random encounters. Okay, that happened and that happened. That's it. With this game, everyone gets involved in the journey. They have a role: lookout, hunter, scavenger, overnight guard, that sort of thing. They all have a role in that journey. They all have tasks. It's not merely a case of them just walking from A to B and suffering the occasional random encounter. So let's have a look inside. So yes, we're in Eriador, west of the Misty Mountains, as you can see. Fantastic map, very much evoking the spirit of J.R. Tolkien's maps of his own, which you'll find in the pages of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings and that sort of thing. And what's great about this is, what's so great about it is that some of this will be familiar. If you're playing in this area, some of this will be familiar in the first edition. It was covered, but really only got as far as Bree. So you're really only looking at, here we go. So there's Bree there. So all this section here is really where, like the Runes of the North campaign and its associated supplement, so the Bree supplement and the basically the Eriador supplement really only covered that bit. So there's all this to explore, completely new for the players. Now some of this is detailed in the starter set because that's devoted to hobbits, and you could take the Hobbit starter set and go out there, and your next stop is Bree, run the Bree adventures from the first edition if you wanted to. Anyway, looking through this, we come to the content page. This is very free league. You can see the basically contents pages with a list of what's in each chapter, headed by the artwork that precedes each chapter. So see that's for the first chapter, and if we turn over, let's have a look. We turn over. There we go. Fantastic artwork, just showing the scope and feel of Middle Earth. Here it is in its rustic glory, because as its heart, there is a rustic feel to Middle Earth. Anyway, open up with a letter from Gandalf, and then we can get into the rules and explaining the history and so on, and how to play the game. And that brings the players up to date with the current history, because obviously it's really only the past few years that matter. Again, more of a great artwork, and Gandalf there striding into Bag End. And we get to the structure of the game, which is explaining how it's played in the adventuring phase and the fellowship phase. So the adventuring phase is when you do all of that. You do all the journeying and the combat and the council for the most part, and then in the fellowship phase you will come home to a sanctuary, and you'll the sanctuary essentially base operations will ruminate on the course of the previous year, and then decide how to improve their character, what they're going to do next, that sort of thing. Go on to the mechanics, the rules, which still use the same dice, by the way. So if you have dice from the previous version of the One Ring from Cubicle 7, you can use those. I have my green set, which I'm very fond of, and which my friend Dave bought us for our game, because we played through Tales of Wilderland and really enjoyed it. And so we get on to things like conditions, where you can be miserable, weary and wounded, and various effects. and the dice roll procedure. I'll explain the rules. The rules themselves are relatively easy. We've got a glossary of gaming terms, and that's nicely built around the character sheet there. That's a nice touch. Another thing I want to mention is that this is it's got a cloth-bound feel, so that's much like Vassan. So this reel feels very nice on the hand. It's smooth, but there's a certain sort of underlying there's a texture to it. Okay. Again, more or less fantastic artwork. So that I think it's nice that they've done this as chapter prefaces, because it doesn't spoil you as a reader, as a real book, because then it gets on to, because then it allows you to really enjoy the artwork, the sort of like the pen and ink artwork here, which gives a sense of scale and scope to the setting, a bit more intimate necessarily than this artwork does. This one, for example, shows presumably the 3 trolls that captured Bilbo and the dwarves in The Hobbit. So when we get on to adventurers, yeah. So we've got several heroic cultures, and they define who the characters are, where they're from, and so on. So we have the Bardings from the town of Dale in the north, at the foot of the Lonely Mountain. And dwarves of Durin's folk, now having refound their favour with the capture of the Lonely Mountain from Smaug. The elves of Lindon, and this is entirely new culture, because everyone thinks of elves really in Lord of the Rings. You think of the high elves and the wood elves, so the wood elves are really of Mirkwood and the high elves of elsewhere, but not those of Eridot of the west, not over the sea to the west, but the west part of Middle Earth. Of course, the hobbits of the Shire, and the Rangers of the north, the Dunedain, so on. And then the callings, basically their occupations, is a captain, so leader, champion, messenger, so the traveller, scholar, favours knowledge, and a treasure hunter. So and warden, of course. So there's a bit of a mix and match. Some of them will be familiar with First Edition, some of them won't. And we get into starting gear with pictures of the weapons. They're all kind of, there's nothing for the most part necessarily innately special about these weapons as such, but I mean basically there's a very brutal quality to them, as also to the armour. There's very serviceable. They're designed to be serviceable. Then we get on to starting virtue and reward and virtue, and we've got 2 factors here: wisdom and valour. And virtues give the sort of like the abilities of the player characters, abilities of their culture, and then rewards, upgrades, essentially the hero's equipment, and it can also be things like for a patron, so that might be Balin, son of Fundin, Bilbo Baggins, Surdin the shipwright, obviously from from Eriador, Gandalf the Grey, Gillian, daughter of Duradel, and for everyone's favourite, yes, Tom Bombadil and Lady Goldberry can be your patron. So yes, and basically the sanctuaries are safe havens and so on. And then we get on to adventuring career, and then raising an heir and creating an heir, because in this game there is a limited number of years during which you can adventure, and then when you stop adventuring, your heir takes over. And we've got skills, so that's the skill list. It's quite short. combat proficiency, we've got combat proficiencies as well. So they're really axes, swords, axes, bows, and spears. Nothing more really than that. Yeah, again, more of this great artwork. Again, look at the sense of scale and sort of like sense of mystery. What was this place? I think we've got a definite sense of age to it. More war gear. Again, it's dealing with standard of living, because you know that how your standard of living determines how much you can equip yourself and what you can do with your money, of course. Then we've got rewards, and so valor and wisdom are discussed in more detail. So, for example, virtues. You know, you may improve the hardiness. Let's have a look at cultural values. Let's have a look at where are we? Virtues of the dwarf, virtues of the hobbits. You've got art of disappearing, brave at a pinch, small folk, short the mark, which are the great with throwing stones, and so on. So you've got plenty of those for the each really make the individual hobbits more distinguishable. For virtues of the Ranger of the North, we've got endurance of the Ranger, foresight of their kindred, heir of Arnor, royalty revealed, strength of will, wealth of the world, and these. And as you gain in experience, you can gain more valor and virtues. Then we got into the adventuring phase. And here we've got discussion of combat, so combat sequence, and basically it depends on where you are placed in the combat order. So you might be at close quarters, and then further away, and so on, all the way out. Now you've got a company of orcs on their way, because you need to ambush some careless folk. Council, and that's dealing with social encounters. And then journey. This is obviously done. They're doing this alphabetically, and you form a travelling company in a journey roles. You've got guide, who's in charge of the decision concerning route, rest and supplies, hunter in charge of finding food in the wild, lookout in charge of keeping watch, scout in charge of setting up camp and opening up new trails. And then everyone basically has to make marching tests, and here we've got actually a little journey log complete with the skills to assign to which character. That's a nice touch. Again, it does make it a bit procedural, but that reinforces that it's very much part of the play. And here we've got summer discovery of a white unit out in the wilds, because there are some places you do not want to go, but of course you will, because you're brave adventurers. So we've got the fellowship phase. We've got various undertakings, which is gather rumours, heal scars, meet your patron, ponder storied and figured maps, raise an heir, recount a story, study magical items, write a song, strengthen your fellowship. And it's all about exploring things that brought back the year or preparing for the next version. And here we get on to the Lawmaster, and you have to get one of the ring wraiths, presumably out and abroad, which you again don't want to run into. So on his guide on how to run the game, starting through and going through the various aspects of the rules from the Lawmaster's point of view. And he's talking about things like the qualities of the Lawmaster as director, as narrator, dealing with things like canon and the Lawmaster. Because one of the things about the One Ring is when it's set. It's set between the events of The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings. So there's plenty of scope. When the player characters have room to effect, to basically have an effect upon the world around them, to be heroic. Now, in the future, you have great heroes, Frodo and Sam and so on, and the members of the Fellowship who will do great things, and we know all about those. But we don't necessarily know all about the things that happened in between the events of Bilbo's journey and return and Lord of the Rings. So here's that scope, and the previous edition of the first edition of the One Ring certainly supported that effectively. I'm sure this will do the same. Seriously, if you can find a copy of The Darkening of Mirkwood, you will find yourself in for a treat. It's a terrifically dark, nasty campaign for Middle-earth role-playing. let me say Middle Earth role playing for the One Ring, but role playing in the Middle Earth. So, so lots of tools and advice here for the Lawmaster. Then we come on to the Shadow, which is the threat to the characters, the thing that will scar their souls, their hearts, push them into madness. For example, as this gentleman here is intended. Then we've got adversaries, and here we have the council. That's a nice image, not something I expected to see, but it's a nice addition. And then we get on to particular stats. So here we've got evil men, and listed on there we've got hostile southerners, ruffians, highway robber. Hostile southerners. So a southerner raider, southerner champion, and then ruffian chief, highway robber. And then they do the same thing with orcs. So you've got a nice two-base spread. So orcs, you've got great orc chief, great orc bodyguard. At orcs to the north, goblin archer, orc chieftain, orc soldier. So they're doing a very nice job of that, making them really accessible and easy to use off the page. Then we've got trolls and more. So yeah, and the thing is, the One Ring isn't necessarily a game that needs a lot of monsters, and it doesn't have them. Here we've got the Undead, I'll show you that in a minute, but it doesn't need a lot of monsters because the player characters aren't adventuring all the time, and when they go on adventures, they'll encounter a few monsters, and so you over the course of a campaign you'll use you use quite a few selection of these creatures, but not all of them. So here we've got the Undead. This isn't Dungeons and Dragons where there's lots and lots of different creatures. And here the Undead, we've got wights, such as the Barrow Wight, then Wraith, Fell Wraith, Marsh Dwellers, and then Wolves of the Wild, because wolves are another issue. So you actually have here wargs, and under that Wild Wolf, Wolf Chieftain, Werewolves, Hound of Sauron, and so on. And here we've got treasure. With things like with rules for craftsmanship, marvelous artifacts and wondrous items. So making famous weapons and armor, so the player characters can encounter things which have story. And that's the other thing about the One Ring, is that you're never going to encounter merely just it's a +1 sword. It's going to be a story with a sword with a bit of story to it. And effects for the Eye of Mordor, under whose gaze you do not want to fall under. And then out into the world itself. And here this is the beginning of the Gazetteer for the game, and this is covering, of course, Eriador. Nice little map there. Taking you out further and further, so we've got a discussion of Bree. So basically you've got a random event for an evening at the Prancing Pony, encounter with Barnabas Butterbur, and various characters. So this is also essentially the Bree, sort of the Eriador, immediate sort of Eriador Bree sourcebook as well. So encounters out here, out into the South Downs, so ruins and broken stones, for example. Again, accompanied by this fantastic artwork. More of the onto Mount Graham, with the fearsome trolls, always looking for breakfast, and then out to the west coast. And I'm sure there'll be a source book on this as well. Certainly deserves one, because that's not been covered in gaming, certainly not since the days of Middle-earth role-playing. So let me get down to appendix. We've got a listing of the patrons. No adventure yet, but I'm sure it's going to be in here. So all the patrons, with notes on Bilbo's magic ring, at landmarks, and the Star of Mist, a starting adventure. And that's one that you can play following, I suppose, the starter set. And this feels sort of like with a landmark, a little bit like Forbidden Lands, also from Free League. Okay, and there's enough to basically, there's an encounter, and that's what the character sheet looks like. So nice and easy to read. So yeah, that is the One Ring. Or when we've got basically a gameable map there. So that's done. So you can count the hexes, see how far the player characters have to walk on their journey. So yeah, that's a good addition at the end. I forgot about that. They did that in the first edition. So just to show you, there's the Tolkien-esque version of the map here, and then here's the gaming version of the map here. So that's fantastic. That's a really good idea. Makes it nice and accessible. Just flip to the back and there you go. So that's the One Ring from Free League Publishing. Available now. And if you haven't got a copy, do you recommend it? It does feel. I mean, I've not played this version and I really want to, but I have played the first edition and it really feels like you are exploring Middle-earth, and the content and the support for it is always really well written, and I'm sure that the Free League Publishing will keep that tone up. Anyway, thanks again for watching another unboxing in the Nook. If you've enjoyed this, then please do hit that subscribe button, like button down below, and of course, if you've got any feedback or comments, I appreciate you taking the time to post those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to yet more unboxings in the Nook, where you will see me out here with a parcel and a book or game which I will unbox and chat about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea, then please do hit the subscribe button. Thanks again for watching, and I'll be back again soon with another unboxing in the Nook. Bye for now.